Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm your host today, and you know what? The only person on the show at the moment. Unfortunately, Cornflake was crook over the weekend, and so he has not seen any rugby. Look, I did tell him that watching rugby was not necessarily a prerequisite to coming on this show and giving an opinion, but clearly he has much more journalistic integrity than I do, and has decided that actually commenting on games that he hasn't seen wouldn't be fair or right. And then Stephen Harris, unfortunately, is running a little bit late. So hopefully he will join me. But at the moment, you've just got me, myself, and I on the show this week. And has become the what's the word? The way we've started this year is I give you a little quote from the New Zealand, or the Little Book of New Zealand Rugby, done by Jamie Wall there. Evening. Oh right, so don't forget. I should tell you first off before we get into that. Where you can catch us. You can catch us on YouTube and Facebook at 8 p.m. on a Monday evening, and also listen to us back as a podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of those wonderful and lovely places. So hello, Rugby Gamer, on the old YouTube there with that one. Anyway, so quote from Jamie Wall's book here for this one is that. Nobody expects the All Blacks to do as well in 1924 as they did in 1905. Rugby in Britain has improved considerably since the latter year, while it is questionable that New Zealand form is as good as it was then. Well, yes, that was in the Evening Post in 1924. The team went on to win all 38 of its matches in UK, France, and North America, becoming known as the Invincibles. So, Stephen Harris, journalists 100 years ago know about as much as they do today. It hasn't improved.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got absolutely no idea, have they, Paul? So
no idea whatsoever on that one.
They probably didn't even attend the games and just relied on reports from other people by carrier pigeon.
Or they watched it in black and white and weren't sure who was who.
Very much so, sir. Hey, great to be on the show. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. All you. NZ Radio Sport viewers who have tuned in this evening, but I made it, but only just.
You have, mate. Well done, sir. Thank you. Otherwise, it's going to be a monologue from me for the next 20 odd minutes before I ran out of things to say, and that would have been it. But before we get it, so obviously the main topic of conversation this evening is going to be the Six Nations games from the weekend, where we saw France take on Wales, Scotland host Italy. And Ireland play against England. So those will be the main topics of conversations. Before we get into that, we obviously got little bits of news to cover off on before we get there. Congratulations to Artie Surveyor, who has been named as the captain for Moana Pacifica. I guess not a massive surprise there. Stephen, or would you have kept with the captain from last year?
Yeah, interesting. I think captain the side last year was that James Leigh? I think who was the captain.
Last year, maybe.
Just trying to think back. Well, hey, listen. If you're going to be inspired by anybody, you're going to be inspired by a World Player of the Year, aren't you, Paul? Who's a bit of a legend, not just in All Black rugby, but I'd say also in Pacific Island, in the Pacific Island community as well. And he's definitely got all the attributes to lift Moana to. Shall we say, bigger heights than previous years.
Yep, unfortunately, he wasn't. He wasn't actually in action at the weekend for Moana Pacifica because the All Blacks aren't back yet to the team, so they'll be available from this weekend. But unfortunately for him, Moana Pacifica lost 21-26 in their pre-season friendly to the Highlanders. There, I'll be honest, I've not been watching the pre-season games. But I will just run through the scores, and unless you've got any sort of comments on any of them, Stephen, just butt in on that. The Crusaders hosted the Blues, and they lost that one 19-35. Now that one was 17-all at one point. Or was it 19-all? Sorry. Anyway, it was close at one point. But unfortunately for the Crusaders, it wasn't so much about the loss, but the loss of players that's their problem. Losing Finlay Brewis and Seb Calder, the two props there, to shoulder injuries. So we'll have to wait and see how bad those are. Now, with the new rules in place for Super Rugby because of Fantasy Super Rugby, we should be hearing much more about injury updates. That's if Fantasy Rugby does actually kick off, because we're only a couple of weeks to go and it still hasn't been released. But hopefully we will get better information on that kind of stuff. This adds on to already the Crusaders are without Johnny McNichol for up to 8 weeks, Rivers Rehana for about a month, and Quinton Strange as well for a few weeks. So injuries, which were a big problem for the Crusaders last year, Stephen, already racking up.
Yeah, I did hear about the Rivers Rehana injury. I didn't know about the Johnny McNichol injury. Of course, he actually added a bit of value to the Crusaders side when he came back in the last year. But I suppose that's every coach's nightmare in Super Rugby or preseason games, is just really to come through these games without any injuries. But in the case of the Crusaders, they came through with a couple of extra injuries, and of course got beaten in that game. Not that there's any points at stake or anything like that, but good for a lot of these younger players to get some game time. And it was great to see the Blues put some of the younger brigade, young Nathan Salmon, playing out on the wing. And I heard a very good performance too from Sam Hainsworth Fa'ofo, New Zealand under-20s loose forward, who was one of 3 very, very good performances in the Blues team on Saturday. So you never know. I'm not too sure if he's actually in the actual squad of the Blues, but it's certainly good to know that they've got reasonable cover there for their number 7s, the likes of Adrian Choate and co.
Yeah, and looking in the chat there, what do I think about the Luca and Davis trade? That's basketball, and you'll need cornflake for that. I haven't got a clue. Trust me. Whilst I enjoy watching a bit of NBA, I definitely am not up to speed on that kind of stuff. So yeah, sorry about that one. So yeah, look, I mean, good head out for the Blues. Definitely kicking on from last year. Now, obviously, this week is without their All Blacks, obviously. Bristol versus the Reds. Bristol 21, the Reds 82. So yeah, good kick out, good run out there for the Reds in that one.
Paul, I was going to say, very much an academy team that was put out on the paddock from Bristol. So coming up against a Queensland team that was pretty much, from what I believe, stacked with Wallaby internationals. It was always going to be a tough ask. Probably a good experience for a lot of those younger Bristol Academy players, but I believe there were about 9 making their debut. But you do wonder at the end of the day, for the likes of the Reds, obviously you want that preseason bonding with trips away, but whether they get anything out of that game, I don't really know, apart from team bonding.
Yeah, look, Lescas named 13 Wallabies in the side to face Bristol, so clearly, yeah, a strong side, as you say, from that one. What Turnaround says was Zilp coverage of the Moana Pacifica Highlanders pre-season to watch. Yeah, very low-key marketing. Yeah, I mean, there was one, I saw some marketing somewhere about one of the, because Super Rugby Aupaki also kicks off soon, and there was a pre-season game there against the Waratahs women's game, and some people tried to go to it, and the response was, "Oh, no, this is behind closed doors." You're like, "What the? Seriously, you're trying to grow the women's game, and you play your pre-season games as internal games behind closed doors? What an absolute joke!"
I was going to say that the Highlanders Moana Pacifica game was played at 1:00 on a Friday afternoon, probably at the hottest time of the day as well. But I suspect that game was played early because it just fitted into flight plans for the Highlanders to jump on a later afternoon flight to head back down south. But you're right, once again, an opportunity. There are fans out there who want to go and watch these games, as was seen in Kirui, where the Crusaders Blues game was played. Good turnout to that game, and I noticed a really good turnout.
Well, 3,000 people at that game, which yeah.
And I noticed a good turnout to the Waratahs Brumbies game, which was played in a rural setting as well.
Yeah, look, so which is fun because I listened to a podcast, the Waddle Lad podcast, and he had Jack Melesi, Mesley. Anyway, he's the new CEO of Super Rugby. So the first time ever, Super Rugby's got its own CEO and its own organisation to actually try and run the competition. I mean, shock horror, wow! how modern is that? Here we are, what, 20 odd years, 25 years in with this, or 26 years in, where it is with this competition. And finally, we got someone to run it. Now, and look, on the podcast, he was saying that he wants to have more work on fan engagement and transparency, and also, and part of that was also having the best product. So look, I mean, it's unfortunately, I don't think the Super Rugby sides in New Zealand, at least, have cottoned on to that, or some of them. And so I think he's early in his tenure. He's only been there about 3 or 4 months, so he's not had very long yet to try and persuade the Super Rugby franchises to change. Let's hope we do see it, because, yeah, as you say, the experience last weekend around the games, it's not nothing's changed. Chiefs Hurricanes, then the Chiefs beat the Hurricanes 43-40 down in New Plymouth, and it took a 92-minute try, but considering there was also an 87-minute try, this clearly was not a game of this was not an 80-minute game. This was some weird 3 halves or whatever it was. But a late try there for the Chiefs to win that one 43-40 against the Hurricanes. And to round things off, as you mentioned, the Waratahs versus the Brumbies, taking it to the Wilds there for 36-36 draw between the Waratahs and Brumbies. So look, encouragingly, Moana against Highlanders, 5-point game. Chiefs Hurricanes, a 3-point game. Waratahs Brumbies, a draw. Only the Crusaders Blues actually had a big margin. So hopefully that's a good sign going on with looking forward. But who knows? I'm probably reading too much into preseason stuff already.
I think that, I don't think you can read too much into a lot of these games. I think it's just really an opportunity for coaches to give the players a real physical blowout. You'll probably find there's not a lot of defense in a lot of these games early season. What I did notice, however, from the Blues Crusaders game was a little bit of rinse and repeat. Last year, some of the tries I actually scored were very much a carbon copy of what we saw last year, with a lot of strong carries and just systematically sort of grinding the Crusaders defense down. But listen, like we say, early days, no points at stake, and I think for the coaches, I think the best thing that they can hope for is no injuries. Yeah,
no injuries, and a bit of players just getting used to playing with each other again. It's been a while, let's be honest, for that as well. So yes, that brings us up to speed with the with where we're at with Super Rugby pre-season. As I say, hopefully we'll get the Super Rugby fantasy before the season starts, and we can kick off with that, have a bit of fun with that as well. A bit of news around the Rugby World Cup for 2027, and that Sydney will be hoping. Well, okay, this is all rumours. This hasn't actually been announced yet, but it looks like Sydney is going to be hosting the Rugby World Cup final. It was between Sydney and Melbourne, but apparently the Victorian government pulled out of the bid for that one. In the end, they apparently were offering less money than Sydney in the first place, and then when it came down to saying, "Hey, give us your final best offer," Victoria pulled out. So it looks like it's heading off to Sydney, but there should be some games in Melbourne and also over in Perth, and obviously up in Queensland as well. So looking at, so we'll see the announcement of that one. Just a couple of remarks. Well, actually, one thing that I didn't realise was that this is the very first Rugby World Cup that's been done in partnership between World Rugby and Rugby Australia. You might remember that Shane has joined us, an ex who used to be one of our an ex guest of the show. It's great to see you there, Shane. So it's a joint venture, which is interesting. So historically, what has happened is whoever's hosting it basically guarantees a certain amount of money to World Rugby, and then the profits they get to keep for themselves. And it's all about the ticket sales. This time round, it's the other way round. World Rugby has basically given Rugby Australia 100 million Australian dollars, and have said we're going to keep the profits. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But clearly, not going to the MCG, which is a 100,000 seater for the final, means that potentially dropping the income a little bit. But yeah, it will be interesting to see on that one there.
I was about to say, Paul, there's a little bit of angst though in Canberra, because there are no games being played in Canberra from what I believe. There was an article that came out on Rugby Pass that the ACT Brumbies head coach Stephen Larkham is disappointed for the Canberran Rugby Union fans after the nation's capital was snubbed from hosting matches at the 2027 Rugby World Cup. So yeah, he's apparently joined a chorus of Wallabies that are not too happy about it. I mean, I know Shane is watching the show, could maybe add a little bit of light on that as well. But they have offered up games in cities that don't have clubs in the competition. For example, Newcastle, Townsville, and it says here Adelaide. Now, I thought Adelaide was, which is in South Australia, was obviously taken off the list. So this article came out on the Rugby Pass a couple of days ago, Paul.
Yeah, we'll see when the official announcement actually comes out with where they're going to be actually be. Looks like they might be replacing the Rebels game with a game against Fiji for the British and Irish Lions, which would be fantastic. That's great. Shame it's not in Fiji, and it will be actually held in Newcastle. And let's hope that the Fiji can pick most of their players. Obviously, they've got a good set of players with the Fiji and Ndura, but also they have other players playing in Europe as well. So hopefully they can get all of their teams as part of that. But yeah, cracking that game is going to happen. So it sounds like to me a very good move. I've not read through that announcement in detail, but good to see.
Gee, that's a game that'd be worth. If you wanted to travel over to Australia and have a look at, there'd be some really good games to look at, but especially that one. I would imagine the Fijian community will get right behind their national side. But boy, that could be an absolute cracker, that game.
So just to respond, the rugby gamer says, "Wait, are the Drua getting a game against the Lions?" No. The Fiji national team is getting a game against the Lions. But I'm just saying that because it's outside, I think it might be outside the window. The international window, so kind of access to players could be an issue. So it might end up being a Fijian and Ndura team in effect, because of the access to players. But let's hope not. It's not just that. Just a couple of reminders about the 2027 Rugby World Cup. It's going to be a fun one because we're increasing the number of teams from 20 to 24. So there are going to be more teams involved in it, and that means also that. Yes, qualification is going to be fun, isn't it? So what are we doing? We're going to have 6 pools of 4 teams, and then somehow we're going to get a round of 16 out of that. Anyway, we'll worry a bit when we get a bit closer to the 2027 about the format. But yeah, why can't we keep it simple? There was an idea of taking up the Swiss model, apparently, which is what we have in European Rugby Champions Cup, which has proven to be not good. That's because the European Champions Cup is nowhere near what it was back when it was the Heineken Cup, where it was simple and you could understand who was going to be playing who. Less so with this Swiss model, as I say. So hopefully we don't go down that Swiss model. We do keep down to just pools and like your second best, your best losers getting qualifying alongside, or your best third places qualifying alongside the first and second places. On that one, the reviewer, good changes, more is more. Yeah, look, I mean, more teams there is good. Let's just try and keep the format simple, please. Simple is good, as we've also said in that one. And that also means the qualification is kind of interesting. Obviously, we have got all those teams that made it into the made the top 3 of their groups go through. So you've got the hosts, Australia, France, Ireland, Wales, England, New Zealand, South Africa, Fiji, Argentina, Italy, Scotland, and Japan have all qualified automatically. Then Europe will get 4 teams straight through, plus 1 team going into the repechage. Asia will get 1 team, which will probably be either Hong Kong or South Korea. Africa will get 1 team, and then one team from Africa and Asia will play off for a place in that repechage. South America will also get one team plus one team into the repechage, and then Pacific. Now, Pacific now includes North America. So out of Samoa, the USA, Canada, and Tonga, 3 teams will automatically go through, and one team will play off with a team from South America for another repechage spot as well. So that's the kind of how it's panning out at the moment. As Simon had mentioned up higher up, that Spain, Georgia, and Portugal could all have qualified by this weekend by the end of this weekend, by the end of this week, sorry, to get into it. So we'll try and keep you up to date with World Rugby World Cup qualification as it's kind of happening right now during the basically the tier below the Six Nations in the European Cup, the European competition there. Any other news items before we kick into the games?
No, I think not, Paul. I think we're probably all looking forward to the Super Season, but I think probably our focus at the moment is well and truly on the Six Nations at this point in time.
Yeah, and we kicked off on Saturday at a lovely time of sort of 9 o'clock in the morning to watch France versus Wales. Great for me, having not working Monday morning, even though I do work Saturday. Sorry, not working Saturday morning, but I do work Saturday afternoon. And unfortunately for Cornflake, he was at work before coming down Croc, so he missed this one. Look, this one finished 43-0 with France beating Wales, and I think you could see it early on that whenever France had the ball, they were getting across that gain line, whereas whenever Wales did, they weren't really. And Wales were also losing the kicking game. Even though the kicking game there were less kicks in this one than quite a few of the other games. There were only 54 kicks in this game from hand. But if you add in, so early on, just for the kind of the eye, your quick sort of scan with your eyes, it was pretty obvious which way this one was going, wasn't it, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wales did pretty well for that first, probably that first 15 minutes or so. You know, they defended well, but they were also defending in a very narrow channel as well. And it wasn't a surprise when the first try was scored by the winger after 18 minutes. They had just simply run out of defenders, hadn't they? And boy, I almost liken this game to a French team on a midweek tour where they know they got the better of their opposition, and they could almost look like they were stuck in second or third gear without really pushing themselves. At the end of the day, too big, too physical. Listen, Wales, for their endeavour, really only had go forward through Wainwright, but he was the number 8, but he was getting hit pretty hard on the advantage line. There was the odd nice break from Thomas, the first 5, who I thought played reasonably well, and Rogers out on the wing, I thought had a pretty useful game. But yeah, totally outclassed. Sad to see, Paul. You know, they're pretty proud rugby nation, Wales, and obviously a lot of the spotlight goes on the coach at this point in time. But I think if we were really honest, if you look at their club performances in the Northern Hemisphere competitions, you've probably got to say Scarlets are probably the best of a bad bunch. They don't have a team in the Europeans Champions Cup either, which is the main trophy. So that probably tells you something as well. And listen, if your club sides are not producing quality players, it's not going to transition into international rugby, is it, Paul?
No, true, absolutely. That's. I mean, they managed to paper over the cracks for a long time under Warren Gatland's last tenure, which was over a decade. But yeah, it's kind of fallen apart since then. But just thinking on France, still what they're good at. Look, at the end of the day, 94% tackling, and you only give up 3 penalties. If you have that, it's you're going to win a lot of games that way because you're just not going to give up points.
Yeah.
Territory in the first half, 71%. In the second half, it dropped right off to 37%. There was a big difference when we saw DuPont go off. Well, actually, 6 players went off at that time, but we saw in that first half, we saw DuPont really running things. Okay, if you look at you can tell this. Just looking at some of the stats here. France passed the ball 147 times, ran it 143 times. Wales passed the ball 235 times, ran the ball 158 times. So they run the ball about the same, but they passed the ball nearly 100 times more, which shows you the difference between running your team off the number 9 and running your team off that first receiver. And France run it all off DuPont. The big thing. To me, they let him run too much. Sideways. You've got to. I would take your scrum half and go, right. Your job is to just blitz out the line and get him, because it all comes off him.
I stand to be pulled up on this, but he almost reminded me of a rugby league dummy half, where there were times he actually ran sideways, popped off a ball to a runner who was changing direction, but he was able to find runners who would find weak shoulders, and they would just get over the advantage line, quick ball, recycle it again. And obviously that first try with the cross kick, he had so much time. He probably ran about 10 meters sideways, looked up and thought, oh, there he is, there's a winger out. But the kick was just so pinpoint that the winger was able to actually run onto it. Boy, he's world class, isn't he? He's a player that's just absolutely on top of his game, and unfortunately for Wales, they just really couldn't shut him down.
Yeah, they had no answer to him. The rugby league thing though did have me thinking during the game. I was thinking, you know what, the teams that could do the similar style should be the Pacific teams, right? All their players, they play Union on Saturday and League on Sunday. Surely they've got some guys who have played a lot of League growing up as kids who could do something pretty similar. And I was thinking that on Saturday was like, oh, if one or two of the if one of the Pacific teams spots this, they could be onto something here. But we'll see if they do. But to me, that I agree on the league connection.
Wales at times so often just ran into contact and basically just created another ruck. And you mentioned those stats before, and unfortunately that's all I saw. But there's not a lot of quality. If you were picking a British and Ireland, the British Isles and Ireland team at the moment, I'm not too sure how many Welshmen would make that team.
Yeah, no, so let's just we'll move on to Shane's question then, but I'll come back to Nocturnal Rights point. He says a question for both lads: what is happening with Wales? Loss after loss and being uncompetitive is not good for them. Absolutely, it's not. A couple of things have happened here. One of them is that financially they've always been, actually, forget the financially is part of it, but also is the fact that they've been arguing between the union and the Pro 14 teams, now the URC teams, and that's always been at loggerheads. Pardon me, there's never been never actually worked in tandem in the same way that Ireland has done between its clubs or its provinces and its union, or Scotland, the way that their clubs and the union actually work together. There's never had that cooperation. They've always been at loggerheads there, a bit like England has had at times as well. And so because of that, they haven't invested properly into the into those clubs and into their pathways, and that is now telling. It doesn't help also that the Welsh football team is on the rise as well, and so hence from that point of view, there'll be other people will also be looking at young players will be thinking about, actually football's a better option than rugby on that one. And also, look, players being eligible for England and being able to go across the road, go across the ditch to England, or across the sort of bridge to play in England as well. So there's a whole bunch of things there, but it really boils. I mean, money is a big part of it, but it really boils down to the unions and the clubs just being at loggerheads and fighting, basically since professional rugby started. They've never actually. Hopefully, things are slowly moving in the right direction. But to have taken 27 years or whatever, or 20 or nearly 30 years to get to that stage, is really what's killed Welsh rugby. In all honesty, they papered over the cracks for a while.
Paul, I just thought I'd quickly look back to the 23 World Cup where it's fair to say they overachieved at that particular tournament. And just looking at their side, man, they had a lot of experience. They had Liam Williams at fullback, Reece Dammit, who's gone to NFL on one wing, Josh Adams on the other wing, George North and Tompkins, two experienced guys, Dan Bigger at first five, Toby Falato at number 8. So they had some good players. I can only probably see maybe three or four survivors from that team that played on the weekend.
I think there's a few. There's a couple more. I think Tupe Falato is injured again, unfortunately. There, but I mean, Josh Adams was there. The centre, I've gone blank to say his name, was there as well. But look, it also, yeah, as Simon says, yeah, the former guest of the show, Dave Muffet, didn't help. There are some players still there, but yeah, some of Warren Gatland's selections have also been a bit strange, particularly around fly half and leaving Gareth Anscombe out. And that point of view. So, I don't think he's helping himself at the moment as much as he could do, which is a real shame. Now, I know Gareth Anscombe's not kicking goals, and maybe that's part of it. In fact, he thinks that the 10 has to kick, and I don't think Gareth Anscombe's calves or something like that is or hamstrings are up to kicking. So at Gloucester he doesn't have to kick. So maybe that's also a part of it. Is that he hasn't got another goal kicker in the side that he can rely on. But I don't know. There are some problems. Yeah, also a lot of problems in there for Wales. Getting nilled in your opening game is not a good start. Let's be honest. And we'll obviously look forward to the next games after we reviewed these.
I read a stat. Apparently, it was the first time since about 2007 that they've been nilled. So, gee, that was a fair while ago.
Biggest loss to France in France, but not the biggest loss to them ever. Gareth Anscombe is a fullback, not a 10. I'm sorry, Michael. He used to be a fullback. I agree, but he's been playing 10 for the past decade, nearly now. I think so. I think he's considered a 10 nowadays.
I think he would be better than the 10 that they've got currently.
The 10 they've got currently is a 12. He plays all his rugby. The only time he plays 10 is for his national team. For his club, he's playing 12.
Ben Thomas
is a 12, being forced to play 10. So if he'd been playing 12, absolutely fine. But he's been picked out of position. It's not his fault on that one.
But more importantly, just missing an experienced head.
Exactly.
Thanks for the comments, Michael. And I hope you're well, mate.
The moving on then to to Scotland versus Italy. Boy, oh boy, this is one that I spotted that the TAB had Scotland starting with 19.5 points. So I went and threw a nice little $2 on Italy because I thought whilst I expect Scotland to win, I do not expect Scotland to beat them by 19 points. I was having to perhaps think a bit differently after the first 10 minutes as Scotland went rampant and got a couple of tries and got themselves 14-0 up. And I thought, you know what, this is actually Scotland looking very good here. Italy did pull themselves back into it through the boot of Thomas Allen. Thomas, so they were trailing 19-9 at half time. Some more points off the boot, and then an intercept try drew them up to 19 all before 2 tries to give Hugh Jones his hat trick. Saw Scotland cruise home to 31-19. At the end, it's was 5 tries to 1, which probably, I guess, actually a bit disappointing for Italy, really. Yes, they got close, but the fact that their only try came from an intercept means they weren't actually creating as much as I believe this backline can do. So I was a bit, well played at Scotland for containing what is a very dangerous back line in this with this Italian side.
Listen, you got to give Scotland. There was some really good ball movement in narrow channels, and that was seen in the first try to Hugh Jones, who picked up a hat trick. Some really nice ball movement on the short side, and I thought they exploited the Italians in that space very, very well. But let's be honest, they looked a heck of a lot more dangerous than the Italians. I thought the Italians showed some pluck to still be there at the 47th minute at 19 all, and you probably thought, gee, they were half a chance. But yeah, I think that the Scots, just with that control, especially from in and around Finn Russell, definitely knew which area of the field to play the game.
Yeah, so he did play dangerously sometimes. There was that ball near his own try line which he didn't touch, and you're like, what are you doing? Boy, yeah, he does come. Yes, he is. You have to be able to chalk and cheese at time with him. Yes, he's mercurial, but he's mercurial in both ways sometimes. So you got to be able to stomach that side of his game as well. But look, he's probably he's probably the number one fly half in the British and Irish Isles. So he's probably looking at he's probably in the box seat to be the British and Irish Lions number 10. But he does scare you sometimes, as much as a cracking player he is.
Yeah, it just goes to show he's got license from his coach, Gregor Townsend, probably to just go out and what they say play a natural game. Which
considering those two had a public blow up, they really have mended those bridges.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it's a good way to undo them by playing that sort of rugby, though.
So yeah, look, a lot of people were very bullish about Scotland heading into this tournament about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then unfortunately for them, they've lost Tuipulotu for the season, for the championship, and they've lost a couple of other players as well through injury. So we are going to see their depth tested in this one. Challenge number one, well overcome. Italy, as you say, plucky, but plucky, but as you say, unfortunate that they didn't actually they didn't show us more that we know they can do. So let's hope we will see a bit more of that, because an Italy side that only scored its try by an intercept, and a Welsh side that didn't score at all that's going to be an interesting game come later in the tournament.
Well, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Simon Hughes. I stand corrected. It is
no. It's the British and Irish British and Irish Lions. It's not the Irish and British. Just because that's the way he said it around is wrong.
Oh, okay. There might be something to do with his own roots there. Shall we say?
I think it's his own his own things on that one. Yes. I expected more from Italy in this one. Some moments were nice, but as I say, a shame that we didn't see more creativity from them in this game.
I was just thinking, though, Paul, it possibly is going to be the Irish and British Islands.
Yes, from a number of players, or Leinster and British Lions, could be the actual real one. Internal rights says.
We'll just call them Leinster. Leinster's
going to go to play Australia. That one. Look, fun game, and again, played at a cracking pace. Actually, one thing across all of these games was they were played at a cracking pace. This was not slow 10-man rugby by any stretch of the imagination. For those Southern Hemisphere people who don't catch much Northern Hemisphere rugby, this was played at a cracking pace across all of the games.
Some of it reminded me, especially the England-Ireland game, at times almost reminded me of early days Super Rugby. Such was the ball movement, and at times you can just see these sides are playing with a lot more accuracy as well. It's one thing having a bit of endeavour, but just getting that accuracy is really good to watch. Makes it a fun watch.
Yeah, and look, and this one, and you can tell where's England's problems been in this game against Ireland. In the first half, we had 15 points in total. With England leading 5-10 at half time. In the second half, though, if you think we had 34 points and Ireland coming out on top in this one. It shows that England really have got a problem just keeping that pace up and keeping that intensity up, particularly when the bench comes on. When you look at the scoring from Ireland, but England look absolutely cracking start with the Murley try, with the kick behind from Colin Slade, not Colin Slade, but Slade is his surname because Colin Slade is the ex All Black, isn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say it's changed. It's changed now. Play for England.
I've gone blank as what his first name is, but anyway, Slade, Henry Slade. Thank you. There we go. Henry Slade put the kick through for Caden Murley to score in the corner and put England ahead. Look, losing Marcus Smith was a blow for England. Let's be honest, but I love Marcus Smith going forwards. The problem is, where do you hide him defensively? Because he got hidden on the wing, and he was at fault for at least a couple of these tries by basically being a turnstile on the edge, and that's a real problem. And that's a problem for him. As defensively, he is a bit of a liability. I really cannot see you being able to play him as a 15 to me. So people are calling for Ollie Smith to be at 10 and Marcus Smith to be at 15. Sorry, I just don't agree with that option. But yeah, England really did put some Ireland under pressure in that first half. Just like James Gibson Park try for them, and to be leading 5-10 at half time was fantastic from an Englishman's point of view. Not something I was expecting.
Yeah, I suppose the real disappointment for England, a couple of those tries were just inaccuracy on defence. Alex Mitchell, who I think is a classy halfback, just that tackle on James Lowe really needed to go low. Chopper's legs just went a little bit high, and just James Lowe just used his leg drive to step out of that tackle, because up until then I thought they defended so well. They really had defended well. I mean, so they were getting through a ton of work, right? Especially the Curry brothers and Ben Earl. They were working their socks off defensively. Even Atoje and Martin were getting the odd turnover here and there. So I really felt for the English pack.
Talking point though, Ireland's disallowed try in the first half, where Atoje was held. Now, to me, I am happy I'm happy that was called, but Ireland is so unlucky because 99 times out of 100 that is not called, where the player is holding on to another player. And the fact that Maro Itoje was a person being held, and that's one of his favourite tricks, the irony is not missed at all on that one. But yes, so I'm glad it was called with the player reaching out of the ruck and holding a player's ankle. But I say Maro Itoje does that all the time and very rarely gets blown for it. So yes, really unlucky there for Ireland, but it was the correct call. When it was done. Look, come the second half, and Ireland really stepped up the game, dominated possession, and as you say, some of the England errors in that second half, where I just don't think they could keep up the intensity. I don't think they could keep up the so territory in the first half, 49% Ireland, but they had 68% in the second half. They just controlled where the game was played. They didn't have England had more possession in that second half, but Ireland controlled where it's played. England's discipline went out the window, and they gave it far too many penalties, allowing Ireland to come down, and the pressure was going to tell. Bundyaki ran over the top of Marcus Smith again to score that one, and then once it was 27-10 with less than 10 minutes to go, look, the game was over. The England did get two late tries to make the scoreline look much more respectable and make the game look closer than it was, and that's important in this competition because they've got a losing bonus point, which means that Scotland have to get a losing bonus point against Ireland now. It's going to be important for the table, that losing bonus point. So the fact that England didn't give up and kept going all of the way was really important. Nocturne Right Source says Murley was not good on defence. Yeah, I think England do have a couple of players in that back line who need to work on their defence. Ollie Lawrence is not one of those, by the way. 12 tackles, none missed. Cracking game by him.
I was about to say that was a real head explosion from Murley when the kick went through, and really all he had to do was touch it down, and it would have been a drop out under the sticks, but he decided to try and run it out and got taken into touch, and that pretty much, Ireland are that sort of team. Once they do get their tails up, boy they'll punish you. But there were a couple of real nice set piece tries as well. Like the try scored by the lock, is it Bernie
Tyburn
off the James Lowe break, I thought was just absolutely superb. And speaking of James Lowe, he's a bit of an enigma, isn't he? There was a little bit of a stoush in the first half where he was involved, and I distinctly remember Ben O'Keefe basically saying that, hey, the next person that runs in, I'll be sending to the bin. And of course, from the high kick where England were penalised, he was the first guy to run in. Absolutely nothing done. I think at the time the TMO should have actually reviewed that, and you would have found that would have been an opportunity for England kicking for posts to take the lead. But as it panned out, they kicked down the tram line and basically scored. And the irony, it did come from a James Lowe break. But
James Lowe was had some great moments in this game, and look, he does not have the pace he used to have. Let's be honest. His kicking game was iffy. Let's be honest. He put at least 2 kicks out in the full, which he doesn't normally do. To be fair to him, but yeah, his kicking, his accuracy off his boot was not great. But hey, he had his hand in 2 or 3 tries, and that's what you pick him for at the end of the day. So cracking, he had a cracking game. Was he perfect? Hell no. But no, look, he had a good game in there.
Was it a surprise to see Bundy Aki taken off so early?
I guess yes and no on that one maybe, because look, you look at the strength of the bench. I'm taking him off and bringing on Henshaw. Was on the bench. That's not a bad change. I thought the one player who did come on and tried too much was Jack Crowley. Clearly, he's seen Pendergrast go past him, and I think he was just trying to say, look, this is I want my jersey back, or I want this jersey, and I think he was trying to force the game there, which didn't help things. So I think he was, I think he didn't have his best game. He didn't have a bad game, but I think he could have been better.
One player I did enjoy watching, and it's good to see him come back, was Dan Sheehan. There's a lot of Dan Sheehan that reminds me of Dane Coles. The way that he plays, he's very much capable of playing the tight game, but also playing a little bit wider as well. And his opportunity to take the try was just it had Dan Coles written all over him. So it was great to see. There was a question just asked about also the man of the match as well, Jamison Gibson Park. Listen, I think why he's such an improved player, I just think he just got regular starting rugby from nocturnal right. It's funny how Gibson Park was a fringe super right, but is now in the top 3 halfbacks in the world. I think it's just a fact. I think it's just about trust at the end of the day. We've all known that Gibson Park is a hell of a player. He's a hell of a runner, gets to the breakdowns really quick, takes really good options. There's a bit of Aaron Smith about him as well, maybe not so much in the past, but just gets himself as a 9 in the right positions. And I think originally he might have started his career with either the Blues or the Hurricanes, and he was always the 2nd or 3rd string halfback at those particular franchises. So I think it's just a case of getting opportunities. Same could be said for somebody like Bundy Aki as well. Wasn't always a starting 12 for the Chiefs, but sometimes when you go to another environment and you're the starting player and you can put together consistent form, I mean to say it's fair to say it. For me, he's a very skillful player, and it doesn't surprise me, his rise. And of course, that's also in conjunction with playing with a very good club side and a very good international side. And
he's not with the Leinster, but I do think that look, his another player who perhaps has come across as a sort of bash ball player who's added to his game as well, sort of Nonu style in that kind of sense. Gibson Park is proof that New Zealand hierarchy is not all knowing. Oh, it definitely is not. There are certain players who do not fit the mold and do have to move on. And if you, I think James Lowe is a prime example of that. He was a cracking player, Super Rugby player, but clearly the Steve Hansen, Ian Foster era had decided that no, he wasn't what they were looking for, and he did not fit the mold. Too much of personality, and also perhaps too much just of attacking player. But yeah,
Sean Stevenson, another classic example.
Yeah,
I mean to say. Try to convince me that Sean Stevenson wouldn't walk into another international team as a 15. You know, he's got the skill set, but sometimes at the end of the day, it's just that I think sometimes we're a little bit conservative in New Zealand. That trust goes out the window. Sometimes we'll look at a player will have all these skills, but we'll look at the one thing that he doesn't do. Like we often
exactly, yeah. So Henry Ford. The ex-England England assistant coach. One of the things he was asked about was when what would you have done differently? He said, "Look, I would have concentrated on what players could do rather than what players couldn't do." And I think that's exactly what we talk about here. Some players we talk about what they can't do, not what they can do. And so
because I mean to say, given time, if you give a player a little bit of license, yes, they're going to make some mistakes, but boy, they've got points in you. They're going to win. There's going to be more pluses than negatives at the end of the day. And Andrew Mertens was never the greatest defender. Let me give you the tip. By his own admission, he wasn't a great tackler, but the All Blacks at the time managed to basically hide him, for want of a better word. Betty say play for Samoa. Yeah,
absolutely.
Boy, he would walk in, like I say. He would walk into any one of those sides, but sometimes we look at certain players, Folau Fakatava, they probably think about his pass is not the greatest, or his high kick game is not that great, but boy, does he offer a whole lot of other things. Can you imagine him behind a really good international pack? He'd come up trumps.
Yeah, look, and on the play for Samoa one, unfortunately, some players basically cannot afford to lose their Super Rugby contract to play for Samoa, and by playing for Samoa or Tonga, they make themselves ineligible for the All Blacks. At which point they become a foreign player as far as the contracting thing goes, and therefore they lose their contracts. And if New Zealand Rugby were real about actually growing the game, then they would say, you know what, we'll waive the foreign player thing for Samoa and Tonga in particular, and also Fiji. As well, but Samoa and Tonga definitely could do with it. But hey, no, hey, we've put Moana Pacifica together, so hey, we're doing the right thing. We don't go play there. Who wants to go? But we're doing the right thing for the team for them. New Zealand Rugby.
Yeah, there are some players. You talk of Samoa, Chase Tiatia, for example. I'm really, really surprised Chase hasn't thrown in his lot with Samoa. I don't know where he is at the moment. I think he might be playing up in Japan at the moment. AJ Lam is another player who I think is going to have a pretty big year for the Blues this year, especially with, I think, Bryce Heem. Has he either retired? I'm not 100% sure on that, but he's got an opportunity to nail down one of those midfield spots for the Blues in 2025. But he's another player who could head away and play for Samoa.
So Chase Tiatia is up at Seacom Ruggets with a couple of Fetu Douglas, you might remember, and also TJ Fiani. So there's a couple of players up there that you'll recognise. Corey Hill, also from Wales, by the way, is up there as well. So on that one, the review at Tonga in particular seemed to be in decline. Lost all their end of year games. At least they went on tour though. Samoa couldn't even afford to go on tour on that one as well. Chris, they said the same things as in the UK and France. A lot of Afro-Caribbean African and Caribbean heritage players cannot play for their countries, and I can't afford to lose English qualified status. Yeah, no, you're right. True. Yeah, it's not just New Zealand rugby. It is most of the tier 1 rugby nations. But let's just go back to some of the questions then we've had from Nocturnal Rights asked one. Chris Jones Bailey asked one. Do you think Marrow is captain material? Look, I think
you go first, Paul.
I'll say he's been nailed. He's been anointed as an England captain since he captained the under-20s. The fact that he's taken this long is the thing that's amazed me. I think he's definitely captain material.
Oh, listen, and it didn't affect from his performance as well. You never really see him play a bad game or a quiet game. He's got that real big match temperament. He's physical. He doesn't take a backward step. He's good over the ball. It's like, I don't know if there was a heck of a lot much more he could have probably done on Saturday. Just at the end of the day, defensively, there were a couple of players showing up, and like you said before, Paul, just not enough quality not the same sort of quality off the bench, say an Irish team or even a French team has.
Yeah, they're just keeping up that work rate in that first half was never going to happen. Eddie Jones got sacked with 50% win rate. Borthwick's is 48.3. Is he the best in class? Look, Eddie Jones had a much longer run, whereas Borthwick's picked up a situation and got that. But let's be honest, whilst Eddie Jones started well, he faded badly. Let's be honest. So I don't think he was 50% in his last 2 years, for example. So yeah, I don't think you can compare his entire tenure with Borthwick's. Borthwick needs to be given time. We are heading for he's heading for the next Rugby World Cup. As Simon Hughes also points out, Eddie Jones was the foreigner, and boy did he play up to that as well in that one. So that was the win rate in his final year at 50%. Okay, sorry about that. His win rate overall was 73%. Okay, well there you go then. Maybe Borthwick is getting a bit of an easier ride. If you look at Wales, you don't really understand how the hell they're going to change, how they're going to get themselves out of a hole. You look at England and you go, there's something there. It's buildable, and I think that's your big difference. Is that you can see that Borthwick's got something going on that could be something. Will it ever materialize? I don't know, but he's definitely got something going on there that can potentially exist. Nettie says that it's a shame that age against Levi Amua. He is awesome. Look, Levi Amua's a cracking player, and yeah, the Crusaders just did not know how to play him, unfortunately. He's wonderful on that one. Borthwick got a 5-year contract because he started 1 year before the World Cup, so he got one World Cup cycle.
Just on England, just those outside banks. Listen, on the autumn tour to New Zealand, I was really impressed with George Furbank at fullback, and I know he's out injured or he's not available for the Six Nations, but also Faya Waboso, he's also injured as well. That's a lot of pace as well with those back two. So just missing those extra two. So just missing that extra depth. One thing, if I can be critical of Borthwick, I just wonder if he got his loose forward mix right on the weekend, because listen, I would have started with Cunningham because he's basically he's a big unit, and I just think he would have just given them another ball carrying option in the first half, and I think you could have probably introduced one of the other Curry brothers later in the game, or even Sam Underhill. Yeah,
look, playing Curry and Earl 3 sevens, or 3 players who can play 7. You saw the energy early on, absolutely, but also the line out was shaky because none of them are line out jumpers, and as you say, there wasn't the heavyweight carrier there. So yes, having extra carrier and line out option probably would have helped, but you could see his plan. His plan was to blitz Ireland early on, and it worked until they ran out of steam.
yeah.
That's really
Exactly. And listen, it's fair to say, until, in credit to England, they played out the 80 minutes. I mean to say, if they'd sort of been beaten, if they'd been beaten by sort of 15, 70 points, I think that score might have flattered Ireland a bit. I think that was, for me, that final scoreline was whilst Ireland were probably 10 points the better side, I think England deserved to actually take something out of that game. But apart from the kick in behind and those 2 late tries, there was no really other stage that I could think of that they really got around Ireland.
Yep, true. They tried that, and they tried the kicking behind a few times. It didn't always work.
No.
Right then, we should start looking forward, actually, shouldn't we?
We should.
So next weekend we have got Italy versus Wales. So clearly, the big one here is how can Six Nations not be featured by the bloody TAB? It shows how rugby's gone down in this country.
I've got the odds. I've got the odds for that here, actually.
Oh, good.
The TAB have got Italy at $1.37, Wales at $3.20, the draw at $21.
So what was it? What was that again, please?
Italy at $1.37, Wales
Yep.
at $3.20, the draw at $21.
Yeah, and look, if Italy hadn't got 2 wins and a draw last season, I would have come into this game going, you know what? I'm not sure Italy can cope with being favourites, but actually, I think they can now, and at home, and we've just not seen anything out of Wales. So, it's hard to see past Italy winning this one. As much as you don't want to see Wales go winless again, extending this horrible streak. Yeah. To my mind, this is Italy are the favourites going into this one, and I think the $3 there shows you they're fairly strong favourites. Moving on then to England versus France. Now, when you think about the quality of France, now sure they've lost Untermack because of that red card, so he'll be banned for probably 3 rounds. I'd guess for that for the shoulder to the head, and let's be honest, there was no mitigation there at all. He knew exactly what he was doing, and as I think Sam Warburton said, look, this was revenge for a hit he'd received about 5 minutes earlier that was legal, but this time he was going to he wanted to have some payback, and he did it the wrong way. Keeping your head and discipline is very important in rugby. So even missing him, this French team is currently the favourites to go on to win the tournament, I think. So I'm surprised to see them only at $1.52 against England, and England at $2.60, i.e. So basically they're expecting England to win, beat France more than they're expecting Wales to beat Italy, and England are at home. Look, I expect Ireland to France to win this one, to be honest with you. England, as you say, 2 late tries once Ireland had kind of got rid of lots of players and had the game won. France coming off the back of a dominant defensive display. I don't see where the points are coming from for England.
Yeah, but this also could be a watershed game for the English as well. They might see this as an opportunity. I think on the surface you go for France. What does France do? Do they bring Ramos into first 5, which they've done in the past? That's probably the option that they've got.
Or Jalabert.
Or Jalabert, if he's got over himself, that is.
He's in the squad, so
he's in the squad. So once again, you talk about their quality of depth, and boy, they have got that good depth. They're paying deservedly so. They're the favourites, $1.52. England $2.60. Personally, I'd love to see England win it just to turn it on its head. If you know what I mean, Paul. The draws at $18, but it's going to be a nice balmy evening at Twickenham, a whole 4 degrees. So at least it's going to be dry. So it'll definitely be a good night for rugby and a good time to get up and watch it. I think New Zealand time, that's about a 5:45 a.m. start on Sunday morning.
That's five. Yep, exactly. 5:45 start on Monday. On Sunday morning. Then we finish off with Scotland versus Ireland. Scotland at $2.70. Ireland at $1.47. This is at 4 a.m. on Monday morning. So unfortunately, I will not be able to watch this one live. I've got work to go to after that. And yeah, staying up from 4 till 6 a.m. is probably not the best recipe before you go into work on a Sunday morning. Look, Ireland have got history against Scotland. I think Scotland got a mental block against Ireland and also France. A comfortable Irish win is all I can see here. There, especially with those injuries that Scotland have got. Yes, they got over them against Italy. Ireland, a different ball game entirely.
Yeah, listen, Ireland nowhere near their best last year. I think they were leading 17-6 with a couple of minutes to go, and it was only really a late try by Hugh Jones that closed it up to 17-13. But it was a lot more comfortable than the score. The score suggests that was actually played in Dublin. Dublin last year. Of course, this is an away game. The Scots will be buoyed by their first up win, but listen, there's a big difference between Italy and Ireland. The Irish will take a lot of confidence out of that win over England on the weekend, especially in the second half when they needed to lift their game and really just did enough to pull away from England. I think the Irish, once again, I suppose the biggest decision that their interim coach Simon Easterby has to make is probably who to play at first five. Paul, where he goes with either Crowley or Pendergast. Listen, they're playing a good brand of rugby at the moment. The Irish, like I say, buoyed by their win. I think they'll beat Scotland by 10 points.
Yeah, so look, I think it's a fairly predictable weekend, folks. Maybe a multi-weekend of Italy, France, Ireland. I can't see it going any other way, to be honest with you. But still, it's fun to have international rugby available on that one. Nocturnite says maybe Scotland will be really focused, disrupt Irish ball and scoot away with Darcy Graham. Maybe, but we've said maybe for the past decade. And the maybe never seems to happen, unfortunately, for them on that one. But we will be back next Monday at 8 p.m. Here on New Zealand Sport Radio. So do catch us either on YouTube or Facebook. Also, we will bring you up to speed with how the Rugby World Cup qualifying is going. Apparently a big one, the reviewer says, between Belgium and Romania this coming weekend in Belgium. So we'll try and keep you up to date with how the Rugby World Cup qualifying is going next weekend. So also next Monday. So do join us at 8 p.m. or catch the replay. You can obviously on as a podcast as well. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me. And everyone, stay safe.
Not a problem.